Welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Alex Kramer. It's now time to get you caught up with some rapid reactions. Well, the tributes continue to pour in for Madeleine Albright, who died yesterday at the age of 84. Now, famous people from politics to entertainment took to social media to post photos of their time with the first woman to be U.S. Secretary of State, a woman who was small in stature but made a huge impact on the world. And Albright's family announced her passing, saying they are heartbroken and that the cause was cancer. They also included some of the amazing details of her life, one which made her a refugee twice and earned her the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Now, Albright served during the Clinton administration, and the former president made a statement calling her one of the finest secretaries of state and ambassadors, and that few leaders have been so perfectly suited for the times in which they served. And then the current Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, calls Albright a brilliant diplomat, leader, and trailblazer, and that she loved the U.S. deeply and devoted her life to serving it. Now, Albright showed her character to the very end, last tweeting on International Women's Day. From Kabul to Kyiv and beyond, women and girls are on the front lines in the struggle for freedom and human dignity. My heart is with all those fighting for a better, peaceful, and more equal future. And they say history repeats itself. And then just last month, Albright wrote a strong essay for the New York Times saying invading Ukraine ensures Vladimir Putin's infamy, leaving his country diplomatically isolated, economically crippled, and strategically vulnerable in the face of a stronger, more united Western alliance. Rob, Allison.
Madeleine Albright, such a loss. Again, less than 25 years ago when she was Secretary of State, but it seems like such a forgotten time, such a different time 20 plus years ago, but certainly a brilliant woman and a huge part of our history. Alex, thank you. All right, President Biden in Brussels this morning as we await what will likely be the most important speech of his career in politics. We are also marking 1 month since the invasion began in Ukraine.
And for more, let's bring in GB News anchor and former member of the European Parliament, Alex Phillips. Alex, welcome.
Hi there.
Alex, nice to have you back on. I'm curious what your take is on what we're about to hear from NATO leaders this morning, including Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, particularly the American President Joe Biden. I know I want to hear how NATO will respond if, heaven forbid, WMDs, weapons of mass destruction, are used, or chemical weapons, or if Vladimir Putin does invade a NATO member country.
Yeah, well, this is what we're all waiting to see. I mean, it's imperative now that NATO all gets on the same page. They need to establish what their red lines are. We've heard reports from US intelligence agencies suggesting that Putin could be gearing up to use chemical weapons, possibly localized nuclear weapons. We know he's been deploying thermobaric weapons. So what NATO needs to establish is at what point do they say enough is enough? Now, famously, of course, Barack Obama said that if chemical weapons were used in Syria, that would be a red line. And when we know that Russian-backed Assad loyal forces use them, in fact, nothing happens. So Putin's obviously going to be trying his luck here. But also, we have some idea of the sort of things that NATO is going to do. And one of those is deploying mass troops in the sort of former satellite states of the Soviet Union, all around the borders, and building up NATO defense forces there. Something that previously Putin would have called an act of aggression. And we do know that, again, the Kremlin has been saying, and certainly the Russian ambassador in the UK, that any buildup of NATO could be perceived as an existential threat. And under such circumstances, the Russian constitution allows for deployment of nuclear weapons. But I think that's saber-rattling.
Yeah, Alex, we're expecting more sanctions, but they really haven't stopped Putin so far. What do you think more has to be done? Because we know so many of these European nations rely on energy from Russia.
Yeah, I mean, we just had our budgets yesterday, and the UK is facing a cost of living crisis, the likes of which we've not seen since the 1950s. That's how bad it is. And inflation's potentially set to go into double figures. And all of this is obviously a knock-on effect from the pandemic, but also from these sanctions against Russia. So in terms of things like importation of fuel, some would say that the European Union countries in particular have their hands tied because their reliance on Russian gas was so high. But you remember, under the administration of Donald Trump, he pushed very hard to Germany to say, you've got to cut your ties with the Kremlin, you've got to increase defense spending, you've got to wean yourself off Russian gas. Well, it seems to me that Ukraine is going to be the price to pay that will be the West's wake-up call. In terms of sanctions, I think Putin would have priced a lot of them in. There were sanctions against him after the annexation of Crimea.
Right.
He would have expected this. He's got about 300 billion foreign currency in reserve, and he's got other nations like India, like Pakistan, possibly China, still willing and able to buy his energy. Yes, for a cut price, but enough to sustain the Russian economy and keep it afloat.
Alex, some of the concern here in the U.S. is that it's too late for the West to stop what's already begun. Today marks 1 month since the invasion. If you look at the Gulf War in the early 1990s, it was over in about a month. Okay, so that's where we are with this war. What are people in Europe, particularly in Great Britain, how do they feel about what's happening not that far to the east?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's just in a sense of crisis. What is it that we can do? There's a lot of reports that perhaps Putin's troops are running out of fuel, running out of food. There was this 40-mile-long convoy of tanks that was supposed to encircle Kiev. People are saying that perhaps that's broken down. They're now in a defensive position. But then the worry is when Putin's back's against the ropes, what is he going to resort to? What sort of concessions might the EU, might NATO, might Ukraine itself be prepared to give to stop this war? If they do, is that condoning acts of aggression and invasion? It's almost like we're in a stalemate position now. And one of the main focuses, of course, of the UK is helping to deal with that refugee crisis as well. We've got about 10 million displaced people, millions flocking the border, 60% of which are in Poland. It's a huge crisis for Europe and how to deal with the humanitarian cost of this as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex Phillips, we appreciate you coming on. We know President Zelensky is also going to address NATO today. Thank you so much for your insight.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Alex. Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.